What's going on, guys? Balkan Architect here, and in today's video we're going to be talking about CellBIM. So CellBIM is a plugin for Excel that allows you to bring in your BIM models or your 2D DWG files, your Revit models, your SketchUp models. It supports IFCs, it supports Navisworks exports, so all of these different types of models can be brought into Excel, and then they can be used there. Now you might be thinking, well, why would I want my Revit file inside of Excel? Well, because you can create these interactive links in between your BIM data, your BIM model, your Revit model, and all of the Excel cells. And you can use this to generate your interactive tables, schedules, material takeoffs, and so on. And everything is linked up. You're not exporting out of Revit into Excel and then there's no link, and then if you change the model you have to export again, and so on. No, everything is linked together, and you can work on the model, you can make changes on the model, and your schedules, your spreadsheets, everything will update with those changes to the model. Now these files from Excel can then be saved as XLSX files, and they can be used, you can use them to collaborate, so multiple users can be working on these files if the autosave is turned on. So it's a really powerful tool. It allows you to filter so much information and organize so much data from your Revit models without having to rely on the clunky Revit schedules and takeoffs, and without having to work without a link between Excel and Revit. Now, full disclosure, this is a sponsored video. I am going to be just showing you some of the amazing features of the CellBIM, and if you want to check them out, I'm going to be including a link in the description of this video and then also up in the cards above. Okay, so now we're going to get started, and I'm just going to be showing you how to first load in different types of files. So if I'm just here on the CellBIM tab, if I go to add design files, we have this import from file system, basically importing from your computer. And then here I have set aside a few files that I will use for this demonstration. Now what you'll see here is it can support different types of files. If I expand this menu, you'll see it has the option to import IFC files, things like Revit files, DWG files, so CAD, PDF files, which is really useful, as well as 2D images, so JPEGs, PNGs, TIFFs, and also you have like SketchUp files, 3D asset files like 3ds, and so on. So a wide variety of files. Now, and also if you switch, for example, here to Revit, it's just going to show you Revit files, and like this it's going to show you from that folder all of the files which you can load into Excel by using CellBIM. So let's just use this office building project. So I'm just going to select it, hit open, and then it's just going to load it in. It's going to take a different amount of time depending on the complexity of the project and the speed of your computer, obviously. Now, once it's loaded in, you have some file import options where you can set up the active view. So it doesn't have to be the 3D view. You can pick out one of the floor plans or schedules or ceiling plans, sections, so on. I'm just going to leave it as a 3D view. The measurements, scale, this makes more sense with like PDFs and CAD files. Then we have rotation angle, origin point. Now, calculate quantities is one of the the interesting ones, because it can calculate quantities just from the Revit model, from the materials and the model itself. You don't have to rely on Revit's schedules, so that's cool. And then we have some options in terms of geometry here, and you can calibrate the model. For now, I'm just going to leave it like this and click OK. And what you'll see is that this viewer will, the BIM CT viewer will appear on the right side of the screen, and then according to the import options, it's just going to bring in the model there. And here we go, the model has been loaded in. I'm just going to expand this a little bit. We can navigate around, we can just orbit around a little bit, and this is the model that we have. So as you can see, this is a pretty complex model, and it managed to load it in rather quickly, and you can see I can orbit it around with no issues, no lagging, so it does work really well even with more complex geometry. So anyways, this is just one model. You can load in multiple models at a time. So for example, if you're working with perhaps a few buildings that have been designed as multiple Revit files, or if you're combining kind of like a structural project with an architectural project, so it's just one building but two separate projects, one for the structural engineer, one for the architect, you can load in multiple ones. So if I go here to add design files, I have the option to again import, and then of course I can import this, but I can also import an IFC file or even like a CAD floor plan. So let's try that. So I'm just going to load in this CAD file. So hit open, and again it's just the kind of same process of loading that in. Obviously it does go a bit quicker because it's a CAD file. Again, you get similar options here. You click OK, and then it's just going to load it into our into Excel. Now that it has loaded in the CAD file as well, what you'll see here, it's kind of perfectly overlapped because that CAD file was generated from the Revit model. However, when you load, you can see the lines here, so it's just a floor plan. Now, if you want to move things around, so for example, if this doesn't look correct, you can align your designs by clicking here on, well, align designs. So this is just going to open up a calibrate model window where you can switch in between 2D and 3D, and then you can move things around. So for example, if I want to move this or align it, I can go to move point to point, and then I can say, okay, I want this point to be aligned to this point here. I can click, so it's just going to be moving that CAD file to that particular position. So as you can see here, it's kind of moved a little bit. So it has moved a little bit, it's offset a little bit to the side. So you can play around with these. You can add elevation in meters, and you can play around with that. I'm just going to cancel out of this right now. And then also something else to mention in terms of loading in different types of files. If you want to update your file, so let's say you made some changes in Revit, you can always go here and update design files. So it's just going to update that file, and any connections that you made from that file to the to your Excel spreadsheet, those will kind of follow with the those will be connected with the new updated model. Now, in some cases, you might only want to concentrate on one model. So if you have multiple models, or in this case, we have one CAD file, one Revit file, let's say that I only want to take a look at one of those. Well, here I can just select one of those. So for example, I can select this, and then it's only going to show me that CAD file. So it's not going to be showing me the Revit model, or I can see just the Revit model without the CAD file. And then of course, if I go to all of them, it's just going to show me both kind of overlapped. And let's say I'm done with the CAD file, I can just get rid of it by going here to remove design files. I can select that file and then click remove, so it's just going to basically remove that file from Excel here. Okay, so now let's take a look at the navigation. You just click with your left mouse button, you can orbit around, you pan by holding down the scroll wheel, or you use the scroll wheel to zoom in and out. So it's really intuitive, really simple, really straightforward, and it works really well. Even if you want to go to the interior of the building, it can be used for that as well, and it works really good. Now let's say that you want to have a grid. Well, we do have that option. So here I have this option for a grid. It's a 1 meter by 1 meter grid, and then the thicker ones are 10 meters by 10 meters. So we have that option. Then we have this, which is a mini map, which I really like. So it's this map over here. And what this allows you to do is, depending on your position on the model, it's going to be showing you the floor plan there and kind of where you are, where you're looking at. So this can be really good if you're kind of navigating around the interior. See, here I am at one level, but if I go down a few levels, it's going to show me how that floor plan changes. So I think it's a really cool option to have that map there. Then here we have the option for sections, so you can just activate one of these sections. Here it's basically a horizontal section. You hold the shift key and then you can scroll, and it's just going to create a 3D floor plan, for example, for the X. If I use for Y-axis, for X-axis it's going to look like this. Let's see here. Yeah, so here if I scroll, it's just going to be creating a section through the building like that. Then we have an option here for orthogonal or perspective. Orthogonal really only makes sense if you want to perhaps create some elevations. So you can just go here and then you can kind of play around with some elevations. Usually I would just stick to perspective. And then here we have some options in terms of the visual style. Do you want it realistic? Perhaps you want it transparent, and so on. So you can play around with those options as well. Now also for kind of navigating through the model, we have this layers panel. So if you click on this, it's basically a layers filter. And if you want to turn off some of the layers, let's say I don't want to see floors anymore, I can just uncheck those, and as you can see, all of the floors are gone from the model. So that's really useful for kind of filtering through the model. And then we have the design tree, which is really cool because it allows you to kind of dig deep into the model. It's kind of like a project browser in Revit, really, where you have all of the elements there, and then you can just kind of play around. Here we have all of the doors. I can select one of the doors. Here we have all of the properties of those doors. So we can really kind of start digging deep into the model in terms of all of the data that's available to us through this design tree. Now it's time to start talking about creating a connection between our Revit model and our Excel spreadsheet, and doing that live using the CellBIM plugin. So what I'm going to do first is just show you how to quickly connect an element from the model to the spreadsheet. So here, for example, I have written fix this wall, and let's say I want to refer to this particular wall here. Well, then I can simply right click and hold and drag that over to this cell, and then we have the option to move the object here. It's going to get this little red arrow in a corner, and this basically means that these two are linked. So that means that if I just select this cell, it will immediately highlight this particular wall. Now this is controlled by the BIM connections panel. Here the highlight on selection has been turned on. If I turn it off, obviously it will not do that. Now I can just turn it back on. Also we can turn on zoom on selection, so that means that if you select this, it's just going to zoom to that element, which is really cool as well, especially in a complex model and you might not be sure which item this is referring to. Well, this is going to help. Now we also have this match cell style. So what this basically means is if I just turn off these two, it means that I can just come in here to this particular cell and then give it a different fill color, so just like this. And then if we go to match cell style, it's just going to color that particular item in the color of that cell. So that's cool as well. And then you can obviously just turn that off. Now also what you can do is you can unlink these. So if you no longer want this to work, you can just right click here, go to CellBIM, and then you can delete the connection, so it's no longer going to be connected. Now this is really useful, but let's talk about the actual properties inside of the model. So what I'm going to do next is, let's say I want to add a wall volume parameter for multiple walls in this model, and I just want to have that over here, for example. So what I can do is, let's go here to select box. So it's going to open up the filter elements, and then I can say, okay, I only want to select, let's say, the walls. So I'm just going to check the walls, and then I can just make a selection like this. So it's just going to select all of the walls there. So once I have, let's do that again. Okay, so once I have selected those walls, I can come in here, open up the kind of the properties, and then I can find the gross volume, and then I can just move that parameter. Let's see. Okay, there we go. I can just move that parameter here, so it's just going to give me that value here. And of course, if we update the model later on, it's going to report kind of the new volume that we have. So it's a really good way of kind of linking up certain parameters of either one item or multiple items. Now for selecting multiple items, obviously you can use the approach that I have used with this selection box, but you can also select multiple items by holding the control key, and then you can use that. So for example, I can just move these three, so it doesn't have to be just one, it can be three items, and then when we select them, because of the highlight on selection, those will highlight. Now I have shown you how to use the selection modes, well, the single selection, which just selects one item, or the box that I have shown you previously. We also have a box front only, which works with kind of selecting inside of elevations, things like that. Now let's talk about this panel here, the pick measure panel. So you have the option to pick elements, which if I zoom in here to the window, for example, I can just pick that whole window. However, I also have the option, let's zoom out. Okay, I also have the option to pick faces. So if I zoom into the same window, if I select this, you can see I can only select this individual face. So you can get data only for certain faces which you pick. Also, we have the option of picking lines. Now for picking lines, you actually have to just kind of find a line, select it, and then you can pick that line, and here you will have data and parameters for that particular line. We also have pick length, so this is just like picking a line, but instead of just kind of selecting it, you can actually draw it yourself. So you can just come in here, let's actually go, no, let's go here, and then you can just kind of select a line that goes from one point to the other. You can add additional points, and then you just hit enter, and then you have data on that particular line. We also have pick area, obviously, so for picking out a certain area you can use that. So you can just come in here and pick multiple points, and then once you have that area, you can just hit enter again, and now you have the area and some parameters for that as well. And then finally we just have pick point, where you can select one or multiple points. So you really have a wide set of tools and possibilities for selecting different things where you want to kind of extract data and put it into the Excel spreadsheet. Another really useful thing that you can do is taking screenshots of elements that are linked to cells. So for example, here we have these three walls. I can even zoom on selection there. Now what I can do is I can actually generate a screenshot. So insert snapshot, and here we go. Now it's actually pretty large at this point, so let's just make it a lot smaller. So I'm just going to be scaling this down a little bit. Now I did mess up. You have to hold the the shift key when you're resizing this. So let me do that again. Insert screenshot, there we go, and then I'm just going to select this real quick and use the shift key in order to make it smaller, but of course keep the proportions. So anyways, once we have the screenshot, I can just place it wherever I want to have it. So for example here, now we know that this is referring to this particular screenshot, which is again a really useful feature. Now we're going to be taking a look at some of the more advanced tools that are available, and one of those is connection properties. Now what you'll see here is that currently it's grayed out, and we actually need to select a linked cell in order to use it. So let's first link a cell. So I'm just going to come here and select one of these windows here, and then let's say I want this window to be linked to this particular field, okay, or this particular cell. Okay, so now we have just one cell that's connected to one window, and I actually don't want one window, I want all of them. So how do we do that? Well, what I can do is I can just go to that cell, make sure to select it and then go to connection properties, and now you can see it's no longer grayed out. So here, when I open up connection properties, we get this edit connection window, and here what I can do is go to pick by query, and then this is going to allow me to create a query. So let's go here to the little plus icon, and then we can come here, and for the first one here we can just double click, and then for this I'm just going to go with the element class. Let's stick with the element class equals to, and then here I can double click here, and then I can go to Windows, so I can select all windows, and then as you can see here we have all of the windows that are in this model. Now here I have one additional property, so this is cell property value, so I can choose which value from this query I want to display here in this particular cell. So I can come here and then I can say, okay, let's say I want the count, so the total count, and here as you can see it displays 37, so here we have 37 windows, and then if I hit update, as you can see here, this particular cell is now linked to all of the windows in this model, and this is exactly what we wanted to do. Now we don't have to kind of stick with that, we can do some additional querying. So I can just go back here to connection properties, and then I can come in here, and let's say I don't want to select all of the windows, I want all of the windows on particular levels or stories. So I can just add here, and then I can say here end. So if I just double click here, you can see we have multiple logical operations here. I'm just going to go with and then I can say instead of element class, let's go here to build element story, and then instead of equals to, let's start with greater than, and then here I can open up levels, and then I can say greater than level 3. Click OK, and now as you can see the list is smaller, and then here the value or the total count is at 17, and when I hit update, what you'll see here now, we have only the windows that are on stories above level 3. So here we have level 1, level 2, level 3, and then all of the windows above that are now selected and part of this or linked to this cell. So it's a really powerful tool where you can link, create queries, you can create these advanced selections with logical operations, so you can really filter down things, especially when you have large pools of data and you want to get some specifics. So it's really powerful for that. Now let's cancel out of this and let's explore the BIM data table. Now this is also really powerful. So what this does, and let me open up this BIM data table here. Okay, here you can see we get this window, and then it's basically a window into the BIM model itself, into the Revit model itself. And then here we have all of these options which we can use. So let's start with building stories. So I can find here elements, here we have stories, and then I can just drag it over, and then it creates a table of all of the element stories. Here as you can see we have 7 of them. Now we can continue building this up by adding additional elements. So for example here I can come to let's go to type, and then let's say I want to have all of the doors by levels. So I can go here to type, and then I can drag that out here, so we have another field. Now here we have all of the elements. I don't want that, so let me just go to the other side of this thing. Here we have this filter option, so I can open that up and create a custom filter where I want this to contain the word or the value door. So now once I select that and click OK, now it's going to filter that down to all of the doors depending on the levels on which they're located. And then finally, let's say I want to add the count, so I can go here to count total, and then I can add, oops, let's try that. Oh, it's added. I missed it here. It's at the end of this. Okay, here we go. And now we have the total count. So all of the doors on each of the levels that we have here. Now what's really cool about this is you don't really have to stick with this kind of schedule view. What you can do is you can bring this up, and then it's going to give you that kind of tree view where you can kind of collapse these nodes into each other, so we have all of the different levels, and it's just a better way of displaying everything. So as you can see here on level 5, we actually have a lot more doors than on other levels. And then once you're done with this, you can bring all of this data back into your cells. So here what I'm going to do is just go to select BIM collection columns, and then I'm just going to say that I want to all of these, and I want to include the table headers. Okay, let's cancel out of that, and then I'm just going to hit Control A to select everything, and then I can just drag it here into Excel. And as you can see, or into the cells, and then I can expand these cells, and here it's going to display all of this information from this BIM data table. And then of course you can expand different nodes if you want to have a different display here in your cells. So there you go. That's the BIM data table. It's extremely powerful. You can, as you can see, you can use all of the data that you have from your BIM model, and then you can organize it and generate your tables or your schedules. And that's pretty much it for today's video. I hope you have enjoyed it, and if you want to learn more about CellBIM, please check out their website. I'm going to be including the links in the description of this video, and as I said, up in the cards above. Thank you for watching, guys. Make sure to check out my website, balkanarchitect.com, for more Revit courses. There I have over 120 hours of content, and I'm adding more each week. Make sure to subscribe for more videos, and also I've added a video over there that might interest you as well.